really does not need an introduction. Please welcome Katie Lance to the stage.
Thank you. Do you remember where you were 9 years ago? I can tell you exactly where I was 9 years ago. 9 years ago, I was right here. I was at Inman Connect, New York City. First time I'd ever been at Inman, first time I'd ever been in New York City. And a few weeks prior to that, I had left a job, a comfy, cozy job, and started a new job. And that job was for Inman News. And I remember being very naive, coming to New York City. I remember going to the San Francisco airport, where I'm from, and I had this like overstuffed, overpacked luggage bag thing that I sort of dragged through the San Francisco airport. And I remember landing in San Francisco at JFK and being just mesmerized by this like sea of yellow taxis. This was before Uber. And coming into Times Square and just being starry-eyed by all the lights. And fast forward to the first session at Inman, and I remember being backstage and hearing Brad and all the speakers speak, and I was backstage with the Inman crew. And I remember just having this kind of epiphany that, oh my gosh, more people need to hear this story. More people need to hear this. And so I grabbed my laptop and I'm looking around backstage and I found this sort of wobbly like a rickety chair, kind of a stool. So I found the stool and if you've been backstage, there's all these boxes. So I went over to one of these big boxes where they hold all the backstage equipment and I kind of set up this little makeshift office backstage. And I opened my laptop and I started live tweeting the event. Now, back in 2010, a lot of people still thought of social media as just kind of one of those things the kids do. Not really something for business, let alone Inman in a lot of ways. And I distinctly remember some people walking by, including Brad, looking at me going, "What are you doing?" And then something happened. It became a movement. And instead of me just tweeting, people in the audience started tweeting and engaging in the story. And then people from all over the world started joining in. And fast forward to the next year, the same thing happened, although this time I was smart. I said, I'm going to reach out to a few of these people who are just raving fans of Inman. And we launched the Ambassador Program, which has just grown and flourished. And I remember back then, 9 years ago, handing our ambassadors flip cameras to take photos and videos, because this was before you could take good video or any video with your iPhone. And since then, I've gone on to start my own story and to start my own company. But I tell you that story here today because one of the things I love most about Inman is the story and the brand. And as I look back at my time 9 years ago, there's me in my oversized coat on those red stairs. And I think about this. I think that every brand has a story. As you have seen speakers and different people up here on stage over the past few days and today and tomorrow, and the vendors that you meet in the hallway, the things that are going to resonate with you, the things that you're going to tell a friend on the way to the airport, or you're going to tell your colleague when you get back to your office next week, most likely it's the stories that really resonate with you. And so I'm excited to talk a little bit about today, in our short time together, the power of storytelling. Because I think it's something that's so powerful, whether you're an agent or broker or whatever your role is in the real estate industry. The power of a great story is so powerful. And here's the good news. It's not 2010. We have so many more options today than ever before. We have video and Facebook Live and Instagram stories and podcasting and blogging and all these different things that can happen when it comes to storytelling. So I'm going to share with you a few ideas, a few things that we've seen work really well, and hopefully give you a little bit of inspiration to take your storytelling to the next level. That sound good? Let's do that one more time. Sound good? All right, awesome. So when you tell a great story, when you tell a compelling story, you're answering the question of what does it feel like to work with you? So often I'll look at an agent or broker's Facebook business page, and it doesn't matter if they're in Manhattan or Boise or Austin or San Francisco. A lot of times, even in 2019, it's still the same thing. It's listings, it's links to articles, But so often what's missing is them and what it sounds like, what they sound like. What does it feel like to work with them? Because as we all know, there's thousands of videos about how to get your home ready for the market, how to move to the Bay Area. But nobody's going to say it the way you're going to say it. Nobody has your experience and your expertise. And that's what happens with a great story. Because we work with people who we like, and we work with people we respect, and the experience and professionalism. But we truly connect with people because of their story. And so one of my favorite quotes is this one: if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. I think a lot of times when we talk about storytelling, it can feel a little stressful because we're putting ourselves out there. We're being vulnerable. And especially when it comes to video or Facebook Live or any type of content. And I had a good friend of mine, some of you have heard this story before. I had a good friend of mine a couple years ago who very candidly said to me, "Katie, that's how you look, and that's how you sound. So you need to get over it." And when it comes to video and podcasting and content, a lot of us struggle with how we look, or how we sound, or how to do it right so then we don't do it. One of my favorite books that I've been recommending probably for many, many years is Who Moved My Cheese? I'm sure a lot of you have read this. It's probably 20 years old. And it's not only a great book about change, but it's a great book about a story, about a little mouse whose cheese got moved. And haven't we all had our cheese moved? The last time you had to buy a new iPhone, the last time Facebook updated. Our cheese has been moved over and over again, especially in this room, especially in this industry. But this is a fantastic example of how to tell a story. Another great book I read over the holidays called Built to Sell. Some of you may have read this book. Short book, and it's a book about the whole idea of having a business where it's not just focused on you. It's not just focused on everything in you, and you're not wrapped up completely in every nuance of your business, which I think for probably most of us in the room, there's some good lessons in that. But what I love about this book is it's written in story format. It's very easy to read, great story, and I recommend it for anybody in the room here today. These are a picture of my two boys. I don't think I can do a presentation, especially on this stage, without talking about Owen and Luke. Owen is 11 now, Luke is 8. That first in, by the way, my oldest was only 2, which is kind of crazy to think about that. And I look at how they love real books. And as much as my kids love the iPad, and don't get me wrong, they love the iPad and their digital devices, wouldn't you agree there's still something about a real book, about a real physical book? And every great story tends to have a few things in common. It tends to have 3 things in common. The first is circumstances. Once upon a time. Time, place, what are the circumstances? The second part is conflict. What's the problem? And the third part is resolution, right? Here's the good news. Here's the resolution. And when I think so often about real estate, we can tell this story with just about any of our clients that we work with. Here's the situation. This was the problem. This is how we solved it. And that simple framework is one step to starting to think about how to tell a compelling story. Now, stories can be a number of different things. They could be long form, they could be short form, or they can be both, especially nowadays. So long form are things like a book, a podcast, hiring a video editor, recorded video, maybe even Facebook Live content. Long form video, long form content are things that take time, money, and energy to create. Short form might be an Instagram story, a Snapchat, Facebook stories, here today, gone tomorrow. Or they can be both. And when I look out on this room and I see a lot of you who are doing stories, the ones that are leveraging it the most are using both. They're creating that kind of pillar content, that content that takes time, money, and resources, but they're also augmenting that with some of their short form stories. We're going to share some examples of that here in just a second. One of my personal favorite stories is my own story. This is a picture of my husband and I. And our story into real estate is about 10 or 11 years ago, we bought our first house. And then, like a lot of Americans, we short sailed. So then we were renters for quite some time. And when it became time to buy a house, I have to say I was a little, I don't want to say arrogant, but I was confident because I had worked in the real estate industry for so long. but I was quickly humbled. And anyone who's bought or sold a house recently will agree to this. I was reminded of how emotional and stressful this process is, even when everything goes right. And I remember this moment. This was the day that we got our keys. The house was empty. Our kids ran through the house, opening up the closets and looking at all the nooks and crannies. And I remember taking this picture. Our realtor took the picture. We put it up on Facebook. And this picture, still to date, has gotten just about more likes and comments than anything I've ever shared on Facebook. And so when we think of storytelling, this is a great place to start with storytelling. Maybe you're not in a place to hire a videographer. Maybe you're not in a place to write a book or do a podcast or do some of the more expensive or more time-intensive content. But are you celebrating and telling your clients' stories every time? If you're a broker in the room, are you doing that with your agents? Because just like every client has a story, every agent has a story and a reason why they're in your office, why they're in your brokerage. And it's different than saying, hey, look at us. We have one more agent in our office. Hey, look at me. I closed one more deal. It's changing the verbiage. It's changing the storyline. I'm so honored to work with this amazing family. I love that I get to do what I do each and every day, and I can't wait to see what's next for them. I'm so thrilled to welcome so-and-so into our family here at such and such brokerage. They are an amazing power team, and we can't wait to work with them. It's just changing that narrative. One of the things I saw recently was a good friend of mine, Jennifer Salen. I'm not sure if she's here in the audience here today, but she posted this earlier this year, and it caught my eye. It was one of these posts where she was celebrating her clients, and she posted up some pictures of the champagne and the closing gifts. But what really caught my eye was the comments. And I've always said I feel like social media is like word of mouth on steroids. So I want to share some of these comments. Michelle said, our realtor just sent us a thank you card for using him. You go above and beyond. This is great. Lisa said, Jennifer spoils her clients. I want to buy a home from her. And Michael said, my realtor never did that. I bought 2 houses with her. So again, what's exciting about this, especially when you think about storytelling, is elevating and highlighting your clients and their stories. And it's amazing what happens in the comments. It's that word of mouth in such a powerful way. So social media storytelling really begins, in my opinion, with pillar content. This is content that takes a little bit of time, money, and resources. And the reason why this is so valuable is because the leads you get from great content are just so much better. Instead of chasing leads and trying to always prove who you are, what's really incredible are the agents and brokers that we see that are creating video content, podcast content, longer form content that has a story. It's not just content for the sake of content, but that has heart and meaning, and it's informative, or maybe it's funny or poignant. What happens is you'll start to hear things like, I see you everywhere. I feel like I know you. I feel like you're in my head. And those kind of people, when they're ready to work with you, when they're ready to come to your brokerage, or buy or sell a house with you, they're ready to work with you. They're not shopping around looking for a realtor. And that's the power of attraction, and that's the power of storytelling. So how do you find your voice for your content? This is especially relevant, whether you're brand new to this, or maybe you've been down this road for a while, and you're like, I got this, Katie. This is a great exercise to do, especially here in the new year. Three easy questions to ask yourself to find your voice. Who do you love to work with? Like, really love to work with? This is one of these get real moments where you really think about, who do you love, right? The people who call you and you just can't wait to talk to them. On the flip side, who do you just can't stand to work with? Those people who call you and you kind of avoid the call. Why do you love what you do? And what's most important to you? I can always tell when an agent or broker gets fired up, because I'll start talking to them about real estate and what they do, and then there's like a moment in the conversation where they get really animated about something. Maybe it's their market or something that just happened. And very often I always say, you need to tell that story. That's a great piece of content, right? And it's this idea of really leaning into who you are and who you're not. Look, I have a slide for that. Lean into who you are and who you're not. And I think a lot of times it's really easy in real estate to want to be professional. We don't want to be polarizing. We don't want to pigeonhole ourselves. And then guess what? We become really vanilla and really boring. And when I think about some of the agents and brokers that I love dearly, that are really killing it when it comes to storytelling and telling their brand story, There's some people that don't like them. There's some people that don't want to work with them. And that's okay. They're not there for them. And that's what happens when you tell a compelling brand story. You attract those people who are your people. Think like a storyteller. Have a beginning, a middle, and an end. This is a basic tip, but this is one of those important tips. It's like what we learned in middle school, right? Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then wrap it up. Have a call to action. If you're going to be a great storyteller, you've got to have that last piece. Where can people find you? What's that call to action? What's the reason for your story? It can't be, go to my Facebook page and YouTube. Hey, by the way, you can text me, you can call me, go to my website. Hey, I'm on Pinterest too. Like, pick one. Beginning, middle, and end. How to keep people's attention. Attention is the name of the game. There's more noise than ever before. As I'm saying this, a lot of you are distracted as I'm saying this right now. So how do you keep people's attention with storytelling? 3 quick tips. The first is captions. If you're doing any kind of video content, you've got to caption your videos. Because guess what? Most of us aren't listening to your videos. Half of you are watching videos right now, and you're reading the captions. If you're putting videos up on Facebook or YouTube, I love using a service called rev.com, R-E-V.com. Rev.com, it's a great one to write down if you're taking notes. Rev.com is fantastic. You can take a video, upload it to rev.com, pay $1 a minute for a subtitle file. So every week when we have our new videos, if it's a 2-minute video, 3-minute video, I upload it to rev.com, pay $2 or $3. In a couple hours, they send me a subtitle file. I go to YouTube, we go to Facebook, we upload the video, upload the subtitles, and the subtitles are along the bottom. It's a small thing that makes a big difference. But the same thing goes to those of you who are doing Instagram stories or Snapchat or Facebook stories. Because guess what? Very often, I'm not listening to your video either. So putting some words on the screen so I can get a sense. If I'm in the lobby here at Inman and I'm just clicking through your story, I'm going to click away if there's 20 videos of you and no text. So captions are important. Having a structure to your content also helps. Right? Getting into a rhythm of when you post, what type of content, and then episodic content. This is something that was a huge game changer. Sorry, I know that's like one of those cliche Inman words, right? It was a game changer. But it really was for us to create episodic content. We've now done, 108, 109 episodes with some of our videos that we've been doing. And here's the beauty of doing that. When you create episodic content, people will find you that don't know you, and they might say, I like that girl. I like that guy. I resonate with him or her. She's on episode 109. I got to watch the rest. And so episodic content keeps people engaged. And especially in this day and age, with everyone being distracted, keeping people's attention is huge. There's always the question of what to post, of what to create stories on. And I realize for all of you in the back of the room, you cannot see this. That's why I put a link down here at the bottom. This is something we created probably 5 or 6 years ago. It's still the #1 thing I get asked about time and time again. It's a simple content grid. And this works for, at the beginning level, if you're at the beginning level of social media, it also works for those of you who've been on Facebook 10 years. Because for a lot of us, we just get stuck with what type of content to create, what type of post to write, what type of video to make, what should I do on Instagram stories. And so getting into a system like using a content grid, it's a small thing that can make a big, big difference. The other thing that we have to think about with storytelling is mobile. Mobile's changed the game, right? Now, I remember one of my first phones. It was a phone that looked like this. I won't ask if any of you still have a pink Razor. I loved my pink flip phone. Any of you remember texting on a phone like this? You had to be really committed to texting, right? AAA, BBB. Mobile's changed a lot, of course. 91% of us are on our mobile device every 6 to 12 minutes. As I'm saying this, a lot of you are on your mobile device right now. But mobile's changed the game, so we have to think about that in context when we think about Facebook, Instagram, and social storytelling in the moment. I don't have a crystal ball in real estate or social media, but I think one of the big shifts that we're seeing with storytelling is that shift to that story model of Instagram stories, Snapchat, Facebook stories, which does disappear. It disappears in 24 hours. But the agents and brokers that are really leveraging it is they're doing this thing really well. They're telling the backstory of what does it feel like to work with you? What does it really feel like to work with you? A big tip I can give you with storytelling is be a good finder. If you're stuck on content and you don't want it to be all about you, which it shouldn't, be a good finder. There's so many people that are doing great things. All you have to do is open Facebook, open up Instagram, and every day get really intentional about who are the 2 or 3 people that you can elevate, and maybe share their story with your community. I was on stage recently and I said, be a good finder. Somebody raised their hand and said, is that an app? Where do I download that? It's not an app. Just be a good finder. A few other things here. The reason why this is all so important with storytelling is that real estate's a relationship business. We all know this. Facebook will never replace the face-to-face. Social media will never replace the face-to-face. But relationships are built with small, tiny interactions over the course of time. Every like, comment, story adds up. So here's the good news. Creating great stories and great content does 2 things. It helps build relationships, and it helps attract the people that you want to work with. A few recommended apps and tools. We got to share some favorite apps and tools. It's a question I get asked all the time. These are a few of my favorite tools. Videorama is a great app for video editing. Later, I love for Instagram. Great scheduling app for Instagram. WordSwag and Canva. Those are a few great tools as well for creating graphics. Unfold is a great app. I just used Unfold last night. I had the pleasure of seeing Dear Evan Hansen last night, which was amazing. If you get a chance to see it while you're here in New York, talk about storytelling, incredible. And did a little Instagram story using Unfold. The last thing I want to say here as I wrap up is this. Every stage I think I've ever been on or conference, there's always someone who comes up here and says this. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. We all know this. We've heard it time and time again. But I would like to take it a step further, because when you think about storytelling, what it really does is this. People do business with people they know, like, and trust, and relate to. And that is what it's all about. Thank you.